You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Denkman. Have you been at a party recently and maybe found yourself reaching for a sparkling water instead of a glass of wine? Well, join the club. A new Gallup poll found that Americans are drinking less than ever before. Only 54% of U.S. adults are reporting that they consume alcohol. That's a record low since the survey company started asking about people's drinking habits back in 1939. And young people are drinking less than older Americans, a trend we're seeing in our region, too. The Seattle Times reports that young people, especially young men, are reporting lower alcohol consumption than other age groups in the area. Local businesses are feeling the effects as customers back off alcohol. Emily Ritchie is executive director of the Northwest Cider Association. She says cideries in the state are getting fewer visitors to their tap rooms.
We are seeing a big shift in the drinking category overall. We're seeing people drink a little bit less, and we're also seeing the places where folks drink change.
Ritchie thinks part of this shift is related to the spike in drinking that we saw during the pandemic.
And now I think people are correcting that, which is a great thing. We want to encourage healthy drinking, healthy consumption. But people tend to be having more house parties when they gather and they drink together. It's often more at home than going out. And we've been seeing quite a few tap rooms closing, whether it's cideries or wineries or breweries in the state.
According to Ritchie, more than a dozen cider tap rooms in Washington closed in the past year. Several of those belong to one company, Locust Cider. Nevertheless, Washington cideries are finding ways to adapt to changing tastes.
A lot of cideries are very open to making lower ABV or no ABV ciders. A lot of cider drinkers are very health conscious, and so they might be looking for something that's even lower than a 7% ABV. So the association runs a cider competition. It's called the Northwest Cider Cup, and we added a low ABV category a few years ago, and we've seen that increase in the number of entries. And that's either low, like maybe 4% ABV, or no ABV in there. There's some cideries that will remove the alcohol. All of that is welcome in that category, and we're seeing more and more companies produce those.
As local businesses are adjusting to drinking habits drying up, what's behind this shift? Malcolm Purinton is an assistant teaching professor at Northeastern University who studies the history of beer and brewing. One of the most fun specialties in academia I've heard in some time, Malcolm. Thanks for being here.
Oh, very, very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Tell me more about that research. Like, what does that look like? It sounds kind of like a dream job to a lot of people, I assume.
Oh man, it's the least likely thing I thought I'd be able to do. Yeah, I mean, I've been looking at the history of beer and alcohol for like all through grad school. So, I mean, yeah, probably 15 some odd years now. And it involves a whole lot of, I got a PhD in history, so it involves a lot of like archival research. I've also been beer journalist for a regional beer magazine here for about 10 years too. So I'm always kind of keeping up with like what's going on with craft beer, like the opening and closing of different like tap rooms and breweries, but then also diving into the archives, whether I'm in Great Britain or Germany or South Africa, and just looking at kind of the history of styles of beer and kind of using beer as a lens to look at, well, just social communities, culture, technology, trade, all of the different things. And so it kind of really gives you a real look into human societies across time and how that has changed. And it's as fun as it sounds.
Very interesting. So we are talking about this Gallup survey from July that declared that American adults have hit a new low when it comes to alcohol consumption. What did you think when you saw that news? Were you surprised at the decline in reported consumption?
I was surprised at the precipitous decline in consumption. While I have not been too surprised in terms of the overall decline, because we've been seeing that for a couple of years now, and seeing how that's been affecting like just the alcohol beverage industries across, well, honestly, across the world, where we see, you still see the highest level of number of breweries in the United States that we've ever had, but we've also seen a lot more places closing, mostly since COVID. So we've really seen that the change in consumption from COVID really affecting the industries all the way through wine, beer, spirits, all of those.
So we heard one theory so far about this being like a thermostatic response situation where you saw increased drinking during the pandemic and now people are backing off. What do you make of that theory? And do you have any other possible explanations as to why people are reporting less drinking?
Well, I think COVID is definitely the pivotal moment where we can see a shift. Well, during COVID, we had a higher number of people who were drinking alcohol and then higher levels of consumption for those drinkers. We'd already been seeing a shift in the alcohol space prior to COVID in terms of moves towards lower alcohol, beers, but also a move towards kind of, ready to go cocktails. And shifts in that we already had, some, lots of non-alcoholic alternatives. So there's already a shift occurring, but I think we definitely are seeing some of that post-COVID shift back to less drinking by those who do drink. And then there's a lot more coming out too. We're kind of seeing, I guess, the marketing of success of all of the different research pointing out that any level of alcohol consumption is not good for you, like not good physiologically speaking. But it's also a broader awareness since COVID too about mental health. So that if we're looking at that poll where it really focuses on kind of the 18 to 34 age bracket, we have people who have basically grown up socialized within COVID, not around peers, not around people who are drinking in moderation as much as you would have had before. So I think we're seeing that shift going somewhat back, but it's also a continuation from what was going on before COVID.
Yeah, it really does surprise me just because I guess in my own life, I was a consumer of alcohol much more frequently and in greater quantities when I was younger. And I just kind of assumed that that would be a cycle of life for generations, that, you kind of are socializing more, you're hanging out more, and you're drinking more. And then as you get older and the effects of a hangover are more real, you back off. But it seems like younger generations are short-circuiting that right now. What do you think, I guess, besides the pandemic, you've looked at the history of alcohol and the history of alcohol consumption. Are there other factors that can drive either increasing consumption or decreases in consumption, like generally over time?
Moments of chaos or fear of uncertainty usually leads to higher levels of alcohol consumption. If we look at, we can go back a millennia to the Black Death after the plague. We're seeing a large amount. People were consuming so much more alcohol, and that was actually a period of time that led to brewing beer to be a primary economic activity for the home. Really, before that, it was mostly just part of the domestic tasks of most women of the time. So when suddenly you had so many more people, and also due to the loss of population, a lot more money being available too, that brewing became something that someone could survive at as their occupation. But we can also look at moments in U.S. history. So if we look at kind of the chaos of the late 18th century, like looking at the American Revolution, the French Revolution, looking at all of that, in the United States, we saw extremely high levels of alcohol consumption. But there's actually a book called The Alcoholic Republic that focuses just on the levels, like the really off the charts levels of consumption in the United States, well, first the colonies, then the United States, surrounding the American Revolution, going into the early 19th century, where you have people visiting from Europe, just talking about just how intoxicated nearly everybody was.
Like those Americans, they're drunk all the time.
Oh man. They are very specific and graphic in just how inebriated so many people were at the time.
Where do you see alcohol consumption going from here, Professor? Is this a possibility that this trend continues and that society is kind of on a permanent track to drink less? Or do you predict that this is something that will ebb and flow as it has since we started keeping track?
I think that this could possibly have another ebb and flow aspect. The pendulum is probably going to swing because if you look at prior to the past few years, we saw alcohol consumption, pretty steady, and discussions about the detriments of alcohol were not about the substance itself. If we look at Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and then the raising of the drinking age in the United States, uh, it was more focused on kind of the effects that can come from drinking too much, but not really much on the substance itself. Right now, I think we're seeing a specific age group that is choosing not to drink, more so. While I think the health aspects, we're seeing that through the poll, as across the board, we're seeing a decline in consumption, regardless of age. But if we look at that 18 to 34 age bracket, where we can see kind of like the younger millennials and Gen Z, it's a specific moment of socialization where they did not have the peer-to-peer socialization with alcohol, and the assumption of alcohol consumption. The reason that people are doing it is for the peer-to-peer social aspects, being part of your social group, and acting as a rebellion against, the drinking age, against, the older generation. But now, growing up within COVID, when you did not have that, when your socialization is based upon screens, in your pocket, in your computer, and so on, where you were witnessing the older generation drinking and drinking a lot more, that that is now your model that you don't necessarily want to follow. So you're not following the people who are 2 or 3 years older than you. You're looking at, your parents' generation. And so I think that the rebellion right now, part of that could be with not drinking, choosing to have also as much of control over yourself as you can in a time of chaos. So it's basically kind of the opposite of what we were talking about before, of when people generally drink more, while COVID was a time of great chaos. Right now, that those feelings of those insecurities and fears are reflecting more in trying to control through a lack of inebriation.
I am glad when people make health a priority and try to take care of themselves as much as possible. And I'm not commenting on whether or not young people today are choosing to do that because of health concerns. But when I hear that there is a bigger drop in alcohol consumption among younger people, I automatically go to the fact that they are socializing on screens so much more. And how much of this is a symptom of the loneliness epidemic that we have heard about, that people are getting together less often in person, and the need for a little bit of liquid courage is down simply because we're just not gathering in person as much anymore. I mean, is it wrong that I'm a little bit concerned about this, even though, again, it spells good things for public health?
I am looking at the long relationship between humans and alcohol consumption, where before we had distillation, most of the alcohol consumption was relatively low percentage-wise, alcohol by volume and weight, where, when you have the spirits, like if you look at the fears of alcohol consumption were usually tied to stronger alcohol. So having a beer, having a glass of wine, those were touted as being healthy, until more recently. And part of that, I think, is due to the liquid courage, the social lubrication that really comes from that alcohol consumption, the lessening of inhibitions, the liquid courage to go up and say hi to someone that you are interested in talking to, whether that's for a romantic reason, what other social type of reason. So I think what we may have is
People don't do that anymore. They use
don't go out.
apps, right?
Yeah.
They don't meet at a bar or at a club or wherever anymore.
We're seeing, I mean, increases in fitness clubs and run clubs, which is great. It's both sides, like, taking care of yourself and joining a community to have conversations, with something that is, well, historically something that you would settle, at the end of the day with, part of the socializing atmosphere. So, I mean, as we see also a move kind of towards trying to meet people more authentically. So whether it's book clubs, knitting clubs, things like that, craft clubs, also move away from smartphones. right? Having kind of the flip phone again, or having a Polaroid. You're seeing all of the things of the 90s becoming, very popular, fashion and otherwise. Part of that is also that kind of the feeling of freedom that comes without being surveilled all the time through your phone, through social media, through your peers, and not worrying as much, hopefully, about potential employers seeing what might be posted. So again, to that kind of control aspect of maintaining control over yourself and then trying to feel like you have some control over your future.
I think people are going to hear this and think I'm concerned trolling about the youth, which of course I am because I'm 40 now and I get to do that. And also that I might be in the bag for the alcohol industry, which I am not. But I, just looking at changing ways in which people are interacting, it's interesting stuff. And I think it has effects on broader society and where we're going from here. Malcolm Purinton is an assistant teaching professor of history at Northeastern University. Thank you very much, Professor, for chatting with me.
Oh, thank you for having me on. This is wonderful.
One more thing, we also asked you, listeners, to share if you've changed your drinking habits, and we got quite a few responses back. Here's what we heard from you.
Hi, my name is Nicholas Summer. I stopped drinking just because it was holding me back. Ultimately, I wasn't able to prioritize the things that were important to growing up and becoming a functioning adult in today's society. I recently had a child about a year ago, and although it's nice to have a drink occasionally, the instance in which that occurs has greatly been reduced in recent times, especially in the last 2 to 3 years.
This is Lauren. I live in Lilywop. I have been drinking less for years. I never really drank a lot to begin with, but when the study came out a year or so ago about the fact that no alcohol is good for you, I thought, well, I don't need to drink really at all anymore. And since then, I've had maybe 2 drinks.
My name is Nick, and I've got a couple of reasons why I don't drink as much alcohol anymore. I smoke cannabis a lot more than I drink alcohol, and when I smoke cannabis, I don't have the same kinds of hangover issues the next day, so there's that. The other reason is that it's just so expensive to go out, and I've been unemployed for months, got doged, and so I've got a lot of free time on my hands and not a lot of money. So I've try my best to reduce expenses, and it's just too expensive to drink outside.
Hi, my name is Heidi, and I am from Seattle. I did stop drinking almost completely about 7 years ago. And the reason I stopped is because I didn't think it was good for me. There was some new data coming out about the effects of alcohol on health, and I just decided that I'd rather not, take the risk, participate in the drinking culture anymore. And also, I didn't really like the way that it made me feel the next day. I would feel just kind of like in a terrible mood. I will say that I miss it sometimes, especially on a hot summer day when I would love to have a G&T with plenty of lime. And so every once in a while I'll have a sip. Literally, it's usually not more than a couple of sips, and that does it for me.
Hi, Libby. My name's Barbara Mock. I live in Lacey, Washington. My story is that I was diagnosed with breast cancer 2 years ago, and my oncologist, my radiation specialist, and my surgeon all said there's a correlation with drinking alcohol, any alcohol, and breast cancer. So I've had my surgery and I'm doing great, but I no longer drink because I don't want to take the chance of a recurrence based on something that I have control over. Hope this helps. I hope you have a great day. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Barbara, sending you healing vibes and best wishes. And thanks to everybody who called in to share their stories about their decision to cut back on alcohol. Thanks for listening to Soundside. This show is only possible because listeners support us. If you're able to give right now, please check out the show notes for a link to donate. And don't forget, you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 FM Seattle at noon and 8 p.m., Monday through Thursday, or anytime online at KUOW.org.